Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon, we are going to be spending the time between now and when we go on the House floor, having committee discussion about budget adjustment and hearing from our budget teams. As promised this morning, I said there'd be people sitting around the outside, and of course, there are people sitting around the outside. No surprise there. So, so we will be hearing from each team. It's an opportunity for us to have discussion for that team to present the information that they have. We also may have situations where we are not able to have full information back from a department. Excuse me, we still have a little bit of time between now and tomorrow. What will happen, just as a review from this morning, because our health department team wasn't here. After we review what your recommendations are from your team, we'll have a straw poll, try to reach consensus on that. And well, first we'll try to reach consensus. If we don't reach consensus, then we'll have a straw poll and majority rules on a straw poll. That's, and whether it makes it into the recommendation or not into the recommendation. I will take your written information, compile a memo that will go to appropriations, and then we will review that tomorrow before. So you will have an opportunity to see what I have put together, and we get a chance to have sort of one final look at that before we send it off to appropriations by close of business tomorrow. Everybody clear about that? Okay, who wants to go first? We can go first. Okay.
Okay. So Doug and I had the CDD section of the Department for Children and Families. I sent.
And I'm just going to ask people because we have lots of new people to try to say out the acronyms.
Yes. So Department for Children and Families, Child Development Division, that manages the early childhood and after school programs across the state. So the section of the budget is B318, Child Development Division. I sent a document to the committee that outlines all the line items in the BAA with our recommendations. I'm just going to go through the document. So the two biggest thing, and I'll just note that there wasn't anything in the language that was different from the spreadsheet. So there wasn't anything, it was all inclusive on the spreadsheet. So the two main big things were there was a CCFAP caseload savings of a little over $13 million. That was just underutilization of the Child Care Financial Assistance Program. And then there was an additional $13 million that came in. Right now, that's the estimate from the Child Care Contribution Special Fund. So we are recommending that the state set up a special reserve fund to protect against fluctuations of the special contribution special fund in future. So the investment is not at risk and the services won't be at risk in the future.
First off, just so people know, this is committee discussion. So you don't need to raise your hand. You can just ask questions, and I'll only interrupt if there's like 5 people, seeking to ask a question at the same time. So I'm going to ask first because my recollection was that in the fiscal facts that we get, that there was that somebody had made a recommendation. I can't remember if it was the treasurer.
The
Treasurer's okay.
Made a recommendation in the December fiscal facts that special reserve fund to be set up for childcare even before the BAA was out. So our recommendation is consistent with the treasurer's recommendation to protect the.
So I might recommend that be added to your recommendation that we. I made a note in mine here. So if there's information like that, just for other people, sort of, I guess I would say to back up your recommendation, then that's something that is helpful to put in here because members of the Appropriations Committee may or may not
Have
know
seen that,
or have
right,
seen
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Good
So,
point.
okay. Hello, Todd. If you have a question, just if you can either, wave at us or put up your little
Zoom hand.
artificial, your Zoom hand on your computer. That'd be
Will
great.
do, will do.
Okay, thank you.
So are there any other questions?
This question, yeah, do you have a recommended amount to put into that reserve?
So we don't, and I think we're gonna, I'm comfortable letting appropriations and House Ways and Means kind of work that out with JFO because there are, depending on the industry and depending on the total investment, there's different recommendations for a percentage of what should be reserved, but I don't have details of that. And I trust that appropriations and House Ways and Means, if they, because it's a payroll tax, maybe they would have some input. But they will work with JFO to kind of determine what that
If
percentage
they
should
think
be.
this is a good
If
recommendation.
they want to
Yeah.
follow a recommendation.
I think, so for new members, we have various reserves in state government. So in agency human services, for instance, there's a caseload reserve. So that when caseloads actually increase during times when we have lower general fund revenues, during times of recession. And so there's a reserve account, and there's, by law, there's specific amounts or percentages that go into that. And we don't have that information here. So I'm understanding that Ways and Means may be making a similar recommendation, but with more detail as to how that might be calculated, if the Appropriations Committee agrees with our recommendation.
So the rest of the adjustments, I can go through them line.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
I have
sorry.
another question.
Yes.
So they're waiting for eBoard's next projection.
Today.
Okay, so that amount might
May
go up or
change.
down, change?
Exactly.
Okay,
And I will tonight, we'll look to see
Okay.
what the e-board's updated number is, and I can update this and send it to the committee.
okay.
Any other questions on those first two line items? Okay, so transportation contract under earn, there was $378,000 additional funding needed to cover a shortfall for TANF funding for transportation and that was because of a misalignment between the state and federal fiscal years. So the state fiscal year is from July to June, and the federal fiscal year is from October to September. And this misalignment was caused that shortfall, and we support this adjustment.
So that transportation contract is for a single transportation, or does that go out to multiple
I think it's for
providers?
CIS for
For CIS,
multiple
okay.
providers.
We also had Ann and I, a large increase in transportation. So, Ann.
I think different reason that was given, so we can get to that with our.
Okay,
Thanks.
And then the next four line items all apply to the parent-child center agreement. So the Child Development Division has, I think, 14 or 15 different parent-child centers across the state. And two of these parent-child centers, the Addison County Parent-Child Center and the Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, were previously being managed by the Department of Mental Health. And this is moving those two contracts into CDD, into Child Development Division. So they're all now being managed. These are for the CIS services.
CIS?
I'm sorry, Children's Integrated Services within the Child Development Division. So now all of these Children's Integrated Service contracts will be managed out of the Child Development Division. So the 739,000 and the 435,000 are net neutral. That's just moving it from one Department of Mental Health over to the Child Development Division. So that's not any change to the budget, just moving. The other two line items are additions, 184,000 and 208,000 are additions. And the reason for the increase there is because DMH was only, Department of Mental Health was only able to bill for Medicaid recipients, and Children's Integrated Services can bill for non-Medicaid eligible youth for the services. So they needed some additional money to help cover the cost for those non-Medicaid folks that they'll be covering.
So just a little background on CIS, Children's Integrated Services. It serves a couple of different purposes. It's early intervention services, and it is funded in multiple ways, but primarily through Part C, which is federal funding, and there are some state funds and also Medicaid services. So as Ray was just saying, some of the youth are Medicaid eligible, some of the children are not Medicaid eligible. In the case of Medicaid eligible individuals, it is a requirement as part of the early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment. So EPSDT, required early intervention services for children who are Medicaid eligible. So I had heard through the grapevine that there's potentially a waiting list in Children's Integrated Services. Were we able to find out anything more about the waiting list?
I don't know, but I can find out.
Okay. And whether or not any of this funding will assist in the,
I know that it's not, the funding is not serving additional kids.
Okay.
So that question I did ask, like, will this mean that they can serve more children?
Mhm.
And the answer was no. This was just to cover the cost because they're now providing services for not just Medicaid recipients.
okay.
But I can find out about the wait list.
Okay, that would be good. And I think, I guess I just want to confirm that there are no Medicaid eligible children on the wait list. If we could confirm that. Anybody else have any questions on that area or that recommendation so far? Okay.
And then the last one is the TANF revenue realignment. Again, that's a DCF net neutral, 238,000. And that's aligning, moving TANF from Family Services Division into the Child Development Division, where they can spend general funds to meet maintenance of effort requirements. And that has to do with federal funding requirements that needs to be met. We support that adjustment because it is net neutral.
And TANF,
Temporary assistance for needy families in Vermont. It is actually called Reach Up, which we heard about this morning. I will make a note that I do have a issue with calling TANF earnings. That stuck out to me because it's a benefit that goes to families, and this makes it sound like we're like taking money in. So just a note for the department, maybe not use the word earning.
well, yeah, there's sort of been a longstanding
They swap a lot,
transfer,
yeah.
back and forth.
So it's no additional funds, it's just,
Moving
Moving.
one Family Services Division over to the Child Development Division.
Okay, so, Doug, you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. So let's, I haven't heard any like big, oh, no, I don't think that that's a good idea. So I'm just gonna ask if there's anybody who has any sort of like questions about this to ask them now. That would be great. And then I'm gonna just check in to see if there's consensus about these recommendations.
I don't have a question, just a comment or response.
Yeah.
I would have been really uncomfortable about recommending, without the bigger financial pictures and all that, recommending the reserve fund, but recommending it as something for appropriate and ways and means to look at and sort out absolutely makes sense. So I'm totally comfortable with doing it that way.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'll ask it this way. Does anybody have any opposition to these recommendations or any suggestions for edits or more information that you might need before you make that decision? Okay. All right. Thank you to Ray and Doug for working on that. Appreciate it. Thank you for the easy to follow format as well. I appreciate that. Okay, who wants to go next? Okay.
We can go and people can see the opposite of a well-organized.
That's why I wanted to go, so then you could really set that bar.
So,
Yeah.
we basically, we did not list anything that we didn't have any issue or concern about, net neutrals or caseload and so forth. We also didn't list numbers, and most of that is because we actually don't have any disagreements with the BAA in terms of the actual line items as laid out. There are some things that we thought were like red flags that need to be watched, particularly for the FY '26 budget, and one very specifically around the first recommendation, which is the only one that's really a recommendation. And that is something that was not in the BAA at
Excuse me
all.
just a minute. I just forwarded the document.
Oh, I
to-
sent it to everybody.
Oh, you did? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't see that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm
I did
sorry.
it to everybody and it's.
I saw the one you sent to me. I didn't. see the
Oh,
one you
right.
sent
No,
to
then I
everybody.
sent both versions because the chair wanted something much shorter. So you should look at the longer one is the presentation version versus the chair version.
Okay.
So there was nothing in the BAA on what we know now is the Red Clover program, which was the interim short-term secure facility for youth who, presented a danger to self or others until a permanent program is developed. We know that it didn't open on the original schedule. That normally means it shows up in budget adjustment as a savings that's carried over or whatever. And so we asked about that because it wasn't a BAA line item at all. And basically, they said, well, this is all part of money that's going to flow into the ongoing needs, into the youth campus as it's developed. It's money that, there was originally a lot of costs around Woodside, and this is kind of all moving parts. We're really not comfortable with that. We don't think that's a very transparent way. It's almost, I don't want to put those words in their mouth, but it's almost like a slush fund. And so we really think our recommendation is that our chair, the appropriations chair, or maybe they jointly send a letter to DCF/AHS saying, for the FY '26 budget presentation at that point, not on the spot this week or next week, but soon, you need to really identify these funding buckets, where the money is, what's on hand for future, what's being spent, so that there's transparency about this bucket of money. So that's our recommendation on that.
So essentially, there should be, it seems as though there should be a roadmap from what was appropriated for Woodside operation. And then in the ensuing years, essentially where the money has gone. I'm not really expecting the one-time money, but sort of the annual operating. We should be able to see, okay, X amount was appropriate for Woodside in, FY 2020, let's just say. And now we're going into FY '26 and Where has that money moved to?
And has a lot gone into
How much?
residential treatments in the community? Great, that's what we want to be seeing, but let's see it.
See it.
Show us that money flow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like the other things as an adjustment.
Right, let's see how it moved.
yeah. So the second thing that we noted, we did ask about the IT system, which was a part of BAA because there's 1.8 million that's being shifted in with the 3 million from 2 years ago and 3 million that we asked to add in last year, which was pointed out, it's like 15 million in that fund now because it's federally matched. So what's going on with it? There is movement happening. They're expecting to be able to send out the RFP soon. I think it really needs ongoing monitoring. And fortunately, we now have a new committee that will be able to do that. And our one recommendation is that between our committees, we let them know how vital and important it is to see this move.
I've already done that.
All right. Yay.
And actually, the chair of the Energy and Digital Technology Committee last week asked for any IT projects or issues that we have that they should be taking testimony on and looking at. And I said, CWIS and Child Development Information
So you
System.
can scratch that one that says, we recommend communicating the importance
There we
of
go.
it to the energy and digital. Check. Done. Check. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's so good when we're on the same wavelength. I love
Isn't
that.
it? Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So did you have a questions on?
No,
Oh, okay. So the third one was the big increase in transportation. This was not about shifting where the funds were as in years, but this had to do with the fact that apparently they're having fewer providers who do these transportation services. And so they have less bargaining power to get the contracts. We'd like to see them push a little harder on that negotiating, but they may be pretty limited. It rose for us, though, a discussion of a subtopic that really relates to that reporting we talked about earlier. Those who were around, 20 years ago know that it used to be the practice that these transportation contracts basically mostly went to the sheriff's departments. And the sheriff's department's policy was, we're not clinicians. You call us, we shackle. So kids were being moved from, for instance, a non-secure group home to another non-secure group home, and they were being taken in shackles by sheriffs.
Just because it was a sheriff transport?
Just because it was a sheriff transport and the sheriff said, you contract with us, we shackle.
Don't we have a policy about shackling kids?
This is 20 years ago. Yes.
Oh, 20
the
years ago,
policy
sorry.
is what-
I
You missed it 20 years ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes, no, this was 20 years ago.
Phew.
For a long time, we were getting annual reports on the numbers showing good progress, less good in some of the mental health. And then we increased, made stronger language about AHS shall not contract with anyone who doesn't follow the rules. But we stopped asking for the reports because we didn't want to be endless, which made us think, well, maybe it'd be good to check in. And we asked the family services to get us that information. So that we'll be getting that.
And I noticed one thing the other group did that we didn't do. We didn't put dollar figures, but I had them with my homework.
Right.
Ann gave me homework, just to let you know, on my own time. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that number to
It
you
was
folks.
1,190,000. It was significant.
Yeah.
Increase.
Increase, additional, I'll just read it right. I wrote it right from the additional agency digital level agreement charges. 595,399 general fund and 595,399 federal funds. So it was a big amount.
Yeah, that's the Agency of Digital Services.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the IT system.
I
you were
thought, no,
talking
that's
about
a transportation.
Yeah, I thought that's what we were on.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's how much was
I thought you
added
said
to, that's,
ADS. I thought you said ADS, Brenda.
No. We're on transportation. So I was saying, we didn't put dollar figures, but if anybody wants to know them, I wrote them down.
yeah, and we're not opposing it, because this is what this is what they've had to pay so far this year. This is, in order to complete the year, we can't say we'll stop transporting the kids to where.
Right, because the kids have to.
Well, we're
have to
certainly
go.
very concerned about that level of increased cost. The next one is another increase or loss of federal matching funds because of our slow process for getting fingerprinting done. There is only 14 days of eligibility for Medicaid matching funds for kids going into certain programs, but we can't get it because we don't have our people fingerprinted before they start working. Now, right away, that's like, what? Wait a minute. Well, no, they don't work on their own. They are shadowing a staff person, so they're not alone. So we're not creating a, a safety risk with this, but it means we're not in compliance, so we lose the Medicaid money. We did think it might be a good idea for maybe our committee to ask them for any specific measures or updates on anything they're doing to improve timeliness. Most of it's not in their hands. It's the law enforcement end that processes it. Maybe we need to highlight to judiciary, just occurring to me. Make note to judiciary that on those backlogs in that system, it's costing us federal money. And then the last point we wanted to make, just as this is sort of a real, future flag, but when we saw the caseload reductions, which reflected some savings, which are good things if fewer kids are going into out-of-state residential programs or even in-state residential. But when you look at those numbers, it suddenly hits you in the face how much more expensive our in-state programs are than out-of-state programs. And that's because of economies of scale. We have smaller programs, and we totally agreement. We are not in any way suggesting that to save money, we should send more kids out of state or change our public policy. But it's a matter of that we need to be aware of the fact that this is going to be a budget pressure as we work on the very important policy of bringing kids back in state with programs in state. We do have to be conscious that it is going to be a budget pressure. And, we have a 15, 16 bed psychiatric treatment, psychiatric residential treatment facility that's going to be opening in the next year or so in Brattleboro. And that's specifically with a focus on bringing kids back in state who are in programs like that out of state. That likewise will probably have a higher cost in Vermont. So,
And again, following the trail of the money from Woodside to where
Yeah.
it's being used
Again.
now, and determining, how much a new program is going to be costing, how much what's going to be the fallout for that. And
Yep.
I think that's important for feedback. That's what we will be expecting to see in a 26 budget presentation, which we will all see as a full committee. So we'll start next week with, so the governor's budget's being presented on the 28th. We'll hear first from the Agency of Human Services for a broad overview, and then we will have each of the three departments in to give us their specific presentation on their budget. And what I'm hearing your team recommend is that we let them know in advance that we want to see information about these recommendations that you've just made here.
yes, that's our recommendation.
Okay. Any other questions for Anne or Brenda? Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
A comment, an appreciation for some of the focus that you put on the fingerprinting issue and that it's costing funds, but also to bring into the conversation experience I had prior to coming to the legislature, my prior work, the impact of fingerprinting issues is having in early childcare and school age care. There are larger issues at play here that maybe we can address comprehensively at some point.
Service agencies.
It's
everything is about.
Yeah. And I wrote down, I made a note about whether we should be talking to judiciary about the potential, they looked at the court system last year and state's attorney system and stuff in terms of resources. And this is another area that potentially needs judiciary to review.
And that judiciary might not be aware of the actual financial cost to Vermont of not
Of the
having
delay.
those things,
Yeah.
of those delays.
Yeah.
Because that can trade off what it might cost to, augment things to make it happen faster.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Is there any issues with making these recommendations in our report, in our memo? All right, I'm not seeing anybody say, stop, I don't agree. That's okay. Okay, thank you very much. And, we'll have a very active FY 26 report.
Yeah,
And,
we got it easy on BAA. We got a lot coming.
Yeah, yeah. All right, who wants to go next? Okay, Health Department.
Okay, there's that one.
Let's see.
Yeah, in your inbox.
We did, yes, we did just recently email just out a quick synopsis. Sorry, folks, we're not gonna wait for the best to go last, so let me move forward. Just kidding.
We're not gonna be the best to go last. You're funny, Eric.
Anyhow, no, this was a pretty straightforward. We did do a really good overview. We did meet with the two individuals allocated by appropriations in regards to these sections. And after exploring them, we don't have any further recommendations, but I do want to just go through the sections. And section 311, which was administrative and support, the governor did recommend 2 adjustments. They seem to be very straightforward adjustments in regards to the blueprint spoke and pregnancy intervention adjustments, as well as the Vermont Health Access adjustments and utilization. They, as it was expressed, these seem to be just normal adjustments that go through, so I will go with it. In section 312, the governor recommended 1 adjustment, expanding a grant to Planned Parenthood for $100,000, which we both felt was a good investment. Planned Parenthood does good work, and it's a much needed endeavor within our state. So the best that we can do to continue to support that outstanding agency.
Was there an increase in caseload at Planned Parenthood? Was it?
Right, that was my
Yeah,
question.
Oh.
We didn't really get a straight answer in regards to that. And I didn't ask that question in regards to whether there was an increase or there a need to expand services. But I think as I move forward and we take a look at one of the concerns that we did have in regards to money that was allocated into a section of our privy at the time and then suddenly was moved out of that.
We'll get to that in a
Which
second.
I'll get on down to, yeah.
So I guess I'm going to ask you to follow back up with them to see, was that additional caseload? Was that trying to fill a hole from a deficit? Because that's related to your second thing that you're gonna, or whatever it's
Yeah.
on the list. Yeah.
Yeah, which the why.
Thank you for that. And yes, we will most certainly follow up.
Okay, if you can do that, that would be great.
And within section 313, the governor recommended 1 adjustment, and that's the additional 30% portion of the Cannabis Regulation Fund, which is forecast to see an increase. And these dollars must be used for substance use prevention programming as directed within the language. Now, what they are going to be utilizing and allocating that money for is, we are unaware of that at that time until things move forward with testimony. So we could not know which agency may be receiving those increases of that 30%.
So I think one of the important things is to know is that, folks are following through with the directive that we have in legislation that says 30% of those proceeds go to prevention funds after expenses at the Cannabis Control Board. And we know in this committee from last year's testimony that this went to the local prevention councils. We had some questions / concerns about that. And I think that my guess is that those funds will be distributed in the way that they were distributed. So while it might not be a 25 issue, I think that we will definitely want to raise the issue again in 26. And because there are other prevention activities that, we have seen that we think maybe should be supported, that they're just kind of like automatically going out to these regional councils, which, there's some debate about the effectiveness of all that. And we want to know more, okay, this is an influx of new resources. What are you doing with
What
those
are you doing with
resources? Yeah.
No,
So,
I agree. And I want to go back to a comment that Representative Donahue expressed in the word transparency. I think there needs to be a better job conducted in regards to agencies' transparency, as well as the oversight, and really gaining a better understanding of how that money is being utilized and its best effectiveness. in regards to serving the populations in which they're asked to
Yeah.
serve.
I think this is an opportunity for us to highlight this for, again, we were just talking about at DCF, but here at the Department of Health, that in their FY 26 budget, presentation, that we will want to see more information about that. Yeah, go ahead, Jubilee.
I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe the additional funds for Planned Parenthood is to purchase, to be able to create a stock of women's medications that may become hard to get in incoming months and
Okay.
years. So I'm not 100% sure, but I believe I heard something
Something about that, okay.
All right.
Well,
Well, we'll
we'll
most
get that.
certainly follow on up and
Yep.
and
Yeah.
get that. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And then the last piece was at the, when we began to explore this, an additional $4 million was implemented into section 311. That 4 million has now become 6 million and has been moved, I'm
10
sorry,
million.
10 million, sorry.
Mhm.
An additional $6 million was added to the 4 to bring it to $10 million, and it's been moved to section 307. While there is no language directing the use of these dollars, it may be important for the Human Services Committee to watch any expenditures for possible oversight considerations. We did have I would say rather lengthy discussion yesterday with Representative Bloom, and they were also kind of unfamiliar with why this was taken out of there and moved to there. There's been a discussion that there are many agencies that need that gap funding and that gap assistance. We recognize that many of the agencies, nonprofit, that do receive state money have been level funded for many, many years. And I think we have hit a point to where a lot of these agencies can remain sustainable based upon their level funding for year after year. And it seems to be, this might be a gap funding to several agencies that need that fiscal stability. All of that can't be factually what I'm expressing, but it seems that where we came to a little bit of a conclusion of what's going on. But I do believe it's vitally important, and they did express it in appropriations, that we really do a deeper dive and a better investigation on who are we providing this to? What is the real reasoning behind you need this? Is it to expand services? Is it because you're falling short in regards to these? Or is it you're mismanaging maybe what you have and you need the support there to keep mismanaging what you have? I don't mean to be cynical in that comment, but we are all well aware, as you just mentioned, in regards to some prevention programs. Are they providing the services outlined within their grant language? But I believe, and we were in agreement with this, that this really needs significant consideration for oversight.
Can you refresh us? What is section 307? What is this money going to? That's
307 was,
From Health to Diva.
yeah.
moving to section 307.
Yeah.
Is Viva or
Diva Medicaid.
Viva Medicaid? Okay.
And I would have to pull out the current language now in the most updated VA, but the original one from the 10th expressed $4 million to the general fund for contingent sustainability grants to mental health and substance use residential treatment facilities. That language actually has been condensed down to just read general fund for contingent sustainability grants, period. That's not
Variety of
verbatim,
providers.
but
Right.
it
So,
really condensed down.
yeah, it's really a big undefined.
So
bucket.
really
And where
it
did
could-
it come from? What lines was it removed from?
It came out of health
And then moving it where?
over to
To Medicaid, to
To
the,
Medicaid.
And it's no extra dollars, it's just
No.
moving?
It's just
No,
moving.
it's an
6 million.
increase it's $6 million more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, without concrete, how could we even?
so,
Which then brings into play that ability and flexibility though to utilize that money for maybe nursing homes and other initiatives that we invest in. So I can understand condensing the language down and making it more flexible in regards to any Medicaid endeavors.
I,
But I am concerned.
yeah, no, I hear that. It honestly is similar concerns that we have around the long-term care residential budget in Dale. And the, I think you actually hit the nail on the head when you said long-term level funded organizations. What we saw yesterday, it was the first time that those organizations, through our recommendations, had received an increase in 12 years.
Mhm.
Well, we know that the cost to operate, has definitely increased in 12 years.
Yep.
And I think that some of that is true here. I also think that you have valid questions about how do we determine, or how is the Agency of Human Services determining the validity of a request? So do they have a specific process that they use? Do they have a particular regulatory format? So we know in nursing homes that there actually is a regulatory format and a process that's used. And this seems like it could be a variety. They've taken out they've made the language more general.
Mhm.
So it could be mental health, could be substance use, could be something else. We don't know what the something else is, other than it's in DIVA, so it's a Medicaid program. It's a
Yep.
Medicaid program. So it is specifically speaking to H13, which we're going to start to take up next week, around Medicaid rates and a process to annually review Medicaid rates for providers that don't have that review already. So I guess, I'm trying to think about what we're recommending for BAA specifically. I mean, I think that we believe there should be more transparency in this process.
Yeah.
And again, maybe this is giving a heads up to AHS that we want to see what process that you're utilizing to determine whether or not there is a provider in need of financial relief.
Yeah.
And I mean, I appreciate that some of these things are sensitive in nature, I guess I would say, because you're not wanting to sort of undermine the consumer confidence in an organization, but at the same time, we're all spending taxpayer dollars, and so we have to feel confident that we are spending those dollars in a way that has sufficient oversight, I guess.
Yeah, and it's saying that we need to know the process is not exposing who, which
We're not, which
organization might be
organizations,
under
right?
stress and, yeah.
So
I think, yes, part of the issue here is that it's now it's just not in this committee any longer. Right?
Oh, that's okay. We
can still
talk about
raise-
things. We talk.
But as far as making a recommendation to
We can still
BA,
make
you
a
can still- I see, okay.
And some of it, if it's got some types of things that it sounds like it may go to are in our committee. others are not.
Eventually,
So,
yes,
Yeah.
that's the reason to watch, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that, it's moved from the health department to DIVA, we should make note of that, because that actually has not officially happened. Okay, so the BAA as submitted
Oh, they're,
is what we have.
oh, so,
They're
yeah.
requesting, the administration is requesting that it move.
Make that
Uh-huh.
change.
They're requesting that the appropriations committee, when they vote it out, make that change. But the BAA has already been submitted. So it is, what we have is what you all saw. So is the $4 million in the health department. And now, we will make a comment about what we've learned in the meantime, and to prepare AHS for the questions that are going to be asked during the 26 budget. I think that's probably the best way to handle that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
And,
do we know where that additional 6 million is from and what the 4 million is being taken from in the Department of Health budget that was not spent?
So I got just at 1:00, a note from, Representative Bloomley in appropriations that they took it from the FY 26 budget,
Yes.
so they reduced something in the 26 budget.
I heard too.
Oh, okay.
So
So that's something.
again,
Yeah.
so
That's what's yesterday, that, yeah. that one was
it
taken
is
from
weird. It is
Oh,
weird.
Access, yeah.
Preemptively
Yeah.
taking money from a budget that hasn't even presented yet.
It's boring from Peter to pay Paul is all I can say is
Yeah.
it's something that they potentially were going to do in 26, that the timing of such needs to be done
No.
prior to 26. That is not saying I
But again,
agree with
That
it.
leads up to
not
the
saying I
question,
agree with
so-
it, but-
Details matter.
Yeah, details
So
matter.
there's no way of knowing what it's coming from because it's something that won't be funded that might have been
Right.
in next year's budget.
But we all have very long memories in this committee, so we will be asking about this in the 26 budget because it does relate to everything that we do here, so. Okay, well, so you thought that was just gonna be straightforward, right?
Yeah, that was-
So what happens here? I mean,
We're gonna make
I can feel
recommendations.
comfortable with 6 million.
We're going to, we're dealing with the 4 million that was already in there.
Already there, I'm fine with that.
Right.
It's this
Um,
additional that
We're going to say, I'm going to suggest that we say that we are uncomfortable
there you go.
with,
That's all I wanted to hear.
the movement of funds from a budget that has yet to even be proposed,
Thank you.
never mind approved,
Mhm.
to a grant that's going to be taking place in FY 25. That's something that the Appropriations Committee will have to ultimately deal with, but that is, my proposal for how we, word
We
that.
highlight it to them. This is
Yeah.
really in their bailiwick.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
And that's where we were gonna come with our recommended.
that's what I heard you saying. Yeah,
Yep,
that's what I
yep.
heard you saying. So,
Uncomfortable is a
it's
great
a-
word.
Yeah. Okay.
Notice.
Anything else, folks? Any other questions or comments on Health Department? Okay, so I'm gonna presume from that everybody's okay with what we've been talking about, and you'll see it in writing tomorrow, and, all right, great, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Son and Eric, appreciate that. Okay, who wants to go next? Okay. That's me, don't look so darn eager.
Just plugging in my computer. So we're gonna go team presentation.
Oh,
And I'll start. So there was section 321, and it showed $351,627 from general assistance funds being moved, just to
Did you send this to us and I'm
I
just
did,
not
yeah.
seeing it?
to the general fund. We, for all of these where, this is a really tight timeline, and a lot of our questions tend to be not easy answers and require a lot of digging. So we're still waiting responses from the department. So I've done our best to provide recommendations without those and may need to update them. So we're waiting for more information about this. But we recommend keeping it where it's at. They say there's low utilization, but we are concerned that they're, beginning April 1st, we have the potential of hundreds of Vermonters and then potentially over 1,000 who will start meeting that 80-day cap and being unsheltered. And we want those funds to be there and to remain available to vulnerable Vermonters.
So can I ask a question? And I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I was looking for the document as you were
Yeah.
started your talk. So the 351,627,
Yeah.
is it specifically in the emergency housing or shelter line? or-
No, this is the other GA.
Okay. So
But
I'm just
this,
trying to figure out
yeah.
why you're mixing then the April 1st deadline in there.
No, my concern is depending on what happens with that other pot of money as we're looking at potentially hundreds of Vermonters with no resources.
You're saying this could be a source of funds to keep people housed? Is that
Some
what
of-
you're saying?
No, not, it provides essential services that become more,
Are more necessary if people
Yeah.
are unhoused? Is
yeah,
that-
when you're living in a tent or, or if need be, we could look at putting that money over into the housing.
So you're talking about moving money or more money?
Keeping the money where
We're
it
just-
is right now.
Yeah, and then carry
Money
over
you
if
already
we
have.
have.
No additional
Yeah,
funds.
whereas the BAA recommended by the governor requested or suggested that we
Oh,
take it away.
okay.
So
No additional money, you're just saying, keep
Don't
it
take
where it is.
exactly,
Do nothing.
because we have an expectation on April 1st of there being a really increased need if nothing
Okay.
changes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sort of thinking in my head about what those services are, and some of them, like weatherization and stuff, aren't going to apply to somebody who's homeless.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, personal needs and incidentals kind of thing. So yeah, I think,
I mean, I just think there's a big chunk of those services that
Definitely.
don't apply to somebody who's homeless. I mean,
yeah.
there may be some that do, and I'm just wondering if it's wait till you get your other
Yeah,
recommendations.
yeah, no, and that was an alternative. This is also,
Yeah, thinking,
these recommendations are in conjunction with our partner in appropriations, and so
Okay.
reflect some views there as well.
Okay,
So
So
was this 350,000 money that was not spent? in the-
exactly, that they don't
in the
expect to
GA,
spend.
yeah.
Which.
The
kinda have all
other
all the
GA, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thank
not,
you.
this is not emergency housing.
I'm asking this because I've heard in the community that there's been issues with a fuel assistance and weatherization and access to those services, because there's been on the weatherization, there's been insufficient number of contractors
Well, I was gonna say workforce, yeah.
available, the workforce. We know what areas that they were underspending in, or
That's, I think, different money.
that's different money?
That's
Okay.
OEO,
Oh, okay,
yeah, you're
Yes.
thinking of.
yes.
These are like really like, some people can get very small, like stipend, like $25 a month, or money towards like cell phone. These are like emergency needs.
Okay.
When
all right.
people have very like.
I'm thinking
no,
of it, I'm thinking. of something
It
different,
supports if, burial costs, it's a very wide range of services that are covered, but it's really for people who have very little to no other resources at all. And it's really kind of the last stop, people have to, meeting those essential basic
Okay.
needs.
Yeah. All right.
Hey. Do we want to do anything more on this item for now, or?
Any questions about that? So I'm just gonna hold that open for potentially
Yeah.
something that I'm
Again-
anticipating.
We have a number of questions out that, so we
Waiting
have
for
done
answers.
our best as
Yeah.
we can with all the, the information that is in tiny fonts and box in multiple documents.
And this, because I know people are listening, so this is, if we don't get information from the department, then we have to go with our best judgment. And that's what will be reflected here that's what will be reflected in our memo in the end, if we don't hear back from the department about that. So thank you for highlighting in the places where we have still yet to receive information.
So the next line item here is B322, which has to do with 3 squares. And this, we did not have a request to alter this BAA item which was a new input of $1.3 million of additional funds from the federal government for the regular Three Squares benefit, having to do with caseload adjustment. And we want more information on this and what, whether it was because federal demand for this program and hundreds broader on the federal level, or maybe if it's a Vermont specific adjustment that was mandated at the federal level. But I think it'd be really helpful to have.
Does it have anything to do with the summer benefit, summer meal benefit?
Possibly.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't, like I said,
No.
need more information, but we support accepting federal dollars for hungry Vermonters.
Random factoid that of all the people eligible for Three Squares, I cannot get past
Second dinner.
Square, which has four. I have never been able to do it. Okay, so, that of all those Vermonters who are eligible, about 50% receive them.
Wow.
Interesting little.
Yeah.
Fact.
Okay, so it'll be helpful to have more information, but we support the additional increase for food for Vermonters.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, and then the next one, this one does have some suggested language that you can see in the other doc with our language mock-ups. So this one's around Reach Up. There is $499,995 in the budget that they would like to in caseload savings that they would like to move elsewhere. We have the history that Vermont, we use a significant rateable reduction, and we're using prior years to kind of calculate prior years data to calculate what folks need to meet their basic needs today. So we are significantly shortchanging really vulnerable families and making it and not accounting for the cost of living. So we instead recommend that we use these funds to provide each household with a one-time $100 inflation response stipend that will not affect any of their other benefits they're receiving. And then there would still be a little bit left over, and so we just recommend that be carried forward and used to make progress next year on removing the rateable reduction in Vermont.
so question.
Yeah.
Do we have, I seem to recall that we have a precedent for doing something similar to this that we did during COVID. We made a one-time payment to Reach Up. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
several one-time payments to Reach Up families during that time. So I'm trying to think about mechanics so that they've done it before. IT shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
It's been done before. So how much would it cost to do $100 inflation response stipend?
Yeah, based on the, let me go.
This is additional money?
No, this is just using the money that's in the budget rather than moving it elsewhere.
Okay.
And while you're thinking about that, do we have any history about, I'm seeming to recall last year that there was an underspending in Reach Up, and maybe I'm.
We had the same thing last year.
Okay.
And we chose to just keep it there. We didn't, and carry it forward to the next year.
Okay.
So again, we'd also like to know more about this. We estimate this based on caseloads, and this would indicate, if we're consistently that, you would think, have we lowered poverty in Vermont? And I know that's not true. So that says to me that people are having, just like you said, with Three Squares, as that there are eligible people out there who are not accessing these, not able to access benefits that they're eligible for. So I think we also have some questions that should be asked, and how can we make sure everyone who qualifies gets the benefits that they're eligible for. And I will say that this kind of like this stipend concept aligns with the recommendations you'll see from the Advisory Council on Child Poverty and Strengthening Families. It also aligns with some of the recommendations if you look at the Child Fatality Review Team, and that they recommend things like earned tax credits, direct cash transfers, putting money into struggling families' pockets actually helps lower rates of abuse and child fatalities. So
I mean, one of the things we talked about this briefly this morning when I was trying to explain rateable reduction. And so it seems consistent, you know, with our purpose here and our guiding principles.
And our bill last year.
And our bill last year, right? You know, we are trying to make progress on reducing the rateable reduction. And again, this would be maybe putting folks on notice that if there appears to be a trend, then maybe we should be looking at upfront utilizing those funds to reduce the rateable reduction on an ongoing basis.
yeah, we tried to figure out a way, just this is like a very short turnaround time.
Yeah.
And we, you know, work with Public Assets Institute and we're kind of came up with a way to slightly reduce the rateable reduction, but it was based on old, you know, and I don't know, that might be
Yeah.
difficult for the department to pivot because there isn't kind of that precedent. So we figured this would be the easiest way to make sure some of that money, we are addressing that shortcoming. And
this might be in your other document that
Yeah.
I don't have open, but does it say how much that is?
I was just I didn't put it, but I can.
Okay.
Again, this is like, we have the most recent, they do, you know, they do publish every so often, reach up data on the website. The most recent report was 12/13 using November's numbers. And in November, there was 3,727 households.
Is that what you based it on?
So that would, so we're just saying that, that would be $372,700 plus whatever additional costs that the department may have in the admin. And then any additional funds would just be carried over to next year's budget.
Okay, so will you just amend your thing to put in that specific dollar amount?
Yeah, I was planning to, or just waiting to see if we get any updated data.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll just use this.
Yeah.
You're saying to send each family $100? See, I don't agree with that.
Great job.
I've seen too much abuse. If you could do it in food only or something like that, I would be okay, but not cash. I've seen too much abuse just from the people I know. I can't imagine all over the state of Vermont.
So are you familiar with what Reach Up is?
Oh, I know. I
Okay,
worked at
all right.
BCF. I know.
I just want to make sure because it is for essentials like housing and,
I know what it is. I
okay.
just know the abuse. And that's just people I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, I just, comment on it. This goes back a little bit to the same sort of thinking as the child, the reserve, whatever it was called. I think when we look at something that says, well, this is money that's there, we're not adding money, we're saying, don't cut this. That's actually a little bit, non-transparent, if you will, to the extent that we have other pieces just within our segment where we've said, yeah, you need to spend this extra money. So I could just take transportation, for instance, in our budget. Well, they're using that money to offset the money they don't have and that they need to finish the year for the transportation budget. So it's not kind of like available money. That being said, you know, we're focusing on what we think of each of these, and that's where appropriations get stuck with, okay, well, if we listen to this recommendation,
Yeah.
then where do we come up with the money that this was going to go to in the budget adjustment process? So,
I get that.
yeah, so I just sort of reflection on it that,
Next year.
more
they
than-
won't
when we
need
do
that.
this, we have to be aware that we are putting a greater burden on appropriations because they then have to come up with where do we get the money for the other things that Human Services said you should add money to.
Well, this is where, when we take a look, particularly in FY 26, I'm gonna say, that, you know, we may need to, prioritize the things that, you know, our job is to make sure that the Appropriations Committee understands the need. That's what the Human Services Committee responsibility is, because they do not have time to understand in depth the programs and services because they're dealing with the whole state government budget. So that's our responsibility for the jurisdiction that we have. So that being said, I will say in the last couple of years, we have not really had to prioritize the things because we have been fortunate and been able to resource almost 100% of the recommendations that we have made. That is different this year. We don't have the ARPA federal funds. And although we do have a revenue picture that looks better each time, unless I don't know what happened today, unless it, you know, they modified it down, but all indications were that it was going to be, you know, Vermont's economy, as we heard from the state economist, is strong right now. But how much of that is spent on human services is a policy decision that the full body makes. We try our best to make sure that Vermonters' needs are being met and consistent with our guiding principles. And we may, if we have, you know, $100 million in new things that we think ought to be spent on, we may need to say that X, Y, and C are the things that if you have to prioritize in appropriations, these are the first three things that we want you to look at.
Yep.
I don't see that as much in the Budget Adjustment Act, because these are appropriations that are already made to these particular departments. And so I think we have an obligation that if there is unmet need in those areas, that we make a recommendation that addresses that unmet need. Yeah, go ahead, Doug. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Ray was first. Sorry. That was before my
Just-
soliloquy. you
Well,
know.
just
That's called the chair's prerogative.
You actually very eloquently made my point, but I just wanted to reiterate with my own words that this money was already allocated to Reach Up. And based on our guiding principles and the fact that we already reduced these families' basic needs by half, our commitment should be to put money in the pockets of these families so that they can better meet their basic needs and not end up getting in situations that will end up costing the state more money because we are shortchanging them, to use your words. So this is money that was already appropriated for Reach Up. And we've seen this time and again where money is taken from the most vulnerable populations to fund other pressures within state government. And I mean, Anne, I agree with you. I think it is for appropriations to make the ultimate decision, but as a policy committee that has the commitment and those guiding principles, I think we need to recommend that this money stay where it was appropriated, which is to help these families meet their basic needs.
I agree.
Is this the?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Doug was next.
Oh, sorry, Doug.
What Ann shared certainly resonates with me and that doesn't make me uncomfortable in any way, but I think if we, for Ray's comments, want to stick with the charge of this committee and ensuring Vermonters are taken care of, I would probably, maybe we consider rather than $100 stipend and then leave some amount that's going to be relatively small to sort of look ahead towards
That's a good idea.
impacting the rateable reduction. I think we can still send a message about the concerns about the rateable reduction, but increase it to whatever be $125, $130 stipend and just spend the money all via a stipend and not keep some aside.
It's hard to
just-
figure out the numbers
Yeah.
without the, I mean, I would be all for putting it, but I don't know what the cost for the department would be. So yeah, it's just,
Can you tell me again what that number was that in terms of the data you had from what the most recent
3720.
3,727 households.
Okay.
It's okay, $100 each.
And those households include,
So 372,700? No.
Oh,
317.
yeah.
6,774 children.
Could you say that again?
6,774 children.
Okay. All right, so so let's just keep going through your, have
And so
some other
yes,
things
the
in there.
recommendations would change depending on the information.
Information we can get. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, next section is for the Office of Economic Opportunity. And we said that their adjustments were okay, that we agreed with them generally, but with a condition. And just to go over those adjustments that were proposed, the first was $100,000 transferred from grants to personal services for a long-term substitute position to help with shelter expansion. Would be interesting to see which shelter they're referring to. And
Multiple.
okay. Next line item was $126,610 for a one-time full permanent position transferred from the Office of Child Support to Economic Opportunity.
Office of Child Support, not CDD. Okay. When I originally saw that, I was thinking Child Development Division, and I was thinking childcare. We added a bunch of positions, and I'm thinking like, they're giving up a position already. But Office of Child Support is different. Okay.
And then the last was $446,253 transfer of funds for homeless youth services from DCF to OEO to be better utilized through HOP funding. And
That's the St. Albans shelter. That's the amount for the shelter we heard about yesterday.
Yeah, where he said it was gonna, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and he actually confirmed that it was in HOP, a housing opportunity program, that's what HOP stands for. This is record keeping because they've already done it. They've already done it from there, so, okay, and then you have some,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, so the overarching concern we had here was that we want to support these items, but really on the condition that these funds are to be used to pay in-state contractors and entities only, because we are seeing a trend, unfortunately, with some of these shelters that we're contracting out in, North Carolina, and we're paying these people a minimum of over $100 an hour, and on the higher end of the scale, over $300 an hour. To staff this shelter, and I think if Vermonters were aware, or provided the opportunity to have that, I think we, number one, don't want those funds leaving the state. We want to employ our own people. And I know we have a worker shortage, but I don't think we were transparent about the salaries that were available for these roles. I think just that general concept is something that we want to reiterate, and much of our budget policy is like, why are we? I don't know. I think it caught a lot of people's eyes, and
Well, currently, I mean, a lot of our people who are doing this work in Vermont are riding that line of housing insecurity themselves and being under the wages we pay through our normal RFP is really $20 to $25 an hour for supportive services, and then we're paying out of state contractors. And I think if we made those same or even half those types of salaries available to others,
Actually
there's
made
just
that
better.
I made that point with Commissioner Winters.
Excellent.
That, the one thing that I will say is that, I mean, I think it's a separate item. I'm not sure that it relates to the ones up top, to be
Right.
perfectly honest.
We again weren't sure.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we
because
do,
they're
yeah.
moving from
Those are
personal,
positions.
they're moving from grants to personal services. So they're actually creating state employee positions with that. So, but I think it's an important note for us to make in this, because again, it's not actually covered in the BAA, but it's an opportunity for us to say that as we look to FY 26 again, because, we have those two shelters that are being contracted with out of state and exorbitant amounts of resources that
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure that had those same amounts been offered to Vermont providers, they would have figured out how to staff it. So,
Is
at that level.
there some
I know.
I'll be a staff, you know.
I would do it for half.
Okay, all right, so let's just stay focused. Yeah, go ahead.
A question on that, the out-of-state contracts, are those for people who are in positions that are skilled positions that we can't source here, or are these?
No, this is, let me just, because we need to make sure that we're moving. Yeah, I want to make sure we get through the whole thing. No, it was to specifically, there was an RFP put out to run family shelters. DCF indicated that they were not able to reach an agreement with in-state providers. And so they sought an out-of-state provider, and then they reached an agreement with an out-of-state provider at something like $107 per hour for, sort of like on the ground staff, and 300 and something dollars per hour for supervisory kind of things, plus a location fee and a breakdown fee. And all of it is, you can look it up in Digger. Digger covered it pretty well. It was not,
We did
not our intention as a legislature that is how that would go, but it did.
And we did request more information about costs so far and anticipated costs for the, so we can, we're happy to share that if we get that information.
And
I would just suggest that it's obviously a big issue. It
Yeah.
applies to a lot more than just this as an issue to discuss. I actually don't think it belongs as language in the BAA. I think communicating our concern about it and FY 26 and policy regarding, and we also wouldn't say can only be used for in-state. I think we have to have a priority for available in-state, because workforce, we don't want to close off a project when we can't get in state and we banned it. But I do think and that's part of why it needs more discussion and fleshing out.
No, I'm fine with removing it. We were just seizing the
It's
opportunity.
important to put it out there.
yeah, I'm probably actually not going to remove it, but I'm going to have a section, I think, because we've seen in the health department, and we've seen in your division, Ann, of DCF, about things that we are going to have further discussion about in the 26 budget. And I think I will sort of highlight these issues as
A further
issues
yeah.
for further discussion in the
That's good.
26 budget. So we'll put them sort of all together by department there.
Good.
Okay, keep going.
Okay, our next one is going to be the really popular one. We recommend, last year in the budget, we created these 80-day caps for folks who meet the eligibility for this program. I want to remind people that the only people who are eligible for hotel program right now are the really vulnerable Vermonters. Those are children, people with disabilities, senior citizens, and people who are fleeing domestic violence, people who have just faced like a massive, like flooding, things like that. And so right now, based on the current information we have of the folks being housed in hotels, we have 457 households who are there who have met that 80-day cap. That includes 160 children who will be exited to tents. I'm sure you all remember in September what that looked like and felt like, and that is what will happen again on April 1st. There are people living there with dementia. There are people living there who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. There are people who are in electric wheelchairs that they depend on to get around. There are people who are on oxygen that they depend on electricity to make them breathe and survive. There are people who depend on medication that must be refrigerated. And all of these people will be at extreme risk of loss of life or life-altering effects that will massively impact their quality of life. So our recommendation is that we extend the winter weather, I forget the language, but through to June 30th. We've already talked about, we have a bill around this program, and that will give us time to figure that out and deliberate and figure out a way forward. But right now, there is no plan for these people.
What is the cost?
So, yeah,
We
so
don't-
that's okay. Just,
No.
I was going to ask that
Oh,
same question.
okay.
But I would encourage people to open up the language document and look at that on your computer that.
What I can say, and correct me, I believe we budgeted
I know.
for 1,100 rooms
She
a
said.
night. If you look in the most recent report, is this the right report? I have a lot of reports open. No, it's in the housing one. Okay. There are some nights we have more, and then there are a lot like starting, where we're at 600 rooms a night. So one of our questions to the department was, how much of our budget have we spent? Like, what's left? Because it's one part of this process that I'm always like shocked that is missing is.
Well, they're not asking
Yeah.
for more, so they're not
Yeah.
overspending.
They're not
That's one
overspending.
thing that
Yeah.
can be determined. That's all.
Yeah. So we know we're at least under budget. So really,
Well, no, we don't know that we're.
What is
under.
it,
No.
at or under?
we're under.
So,
Um,
so let's sort of like, divide this up
Yeah.
into a couple of different, thought processes here, okay? So in looking at the, language that Katie drafted, so what you're seeing is an amendment to the budget as passed, okay? It's in the email from Jubilee, that she sent at
it's like general,
38,000,46.
yes.
Everybody have that?
Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah. Maybe, let's see what we got.
Jubilee, where'd you come up with the date, June 30th?
Okay, just a second,
Oh,
okay?
okay.
I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page or has access to it. Can't get it up.
It's frozen up right now.
Oh, okay. Okay, so if you can.
I'll look over it.
That would be good. Okay, I'm just gonna walk folks through this language because this is language, I was on the conference, which I'm very familiar with. So again, this is amending this, what this would do is to amend the state's budget as passed, the FY 25 budget as passed. So, the first, if you look at line 12, okay, this is referencing the 1,100 rooms per night between September 15th, 2024 and November 30th, 2024. And what's being struck is, if you'll notice, December 1 to March 31st is that period in between. That's the period we're in right now, winter weather conditions. And so there is no 1,100 room cap during winter weather conditions. It's essentially the capacity of the hotels around the state, essentially. Okay, so what is being proposed is that 1,100 room per night cap is essentially over for this fiscal year, that it ended on November 30th and that it would not be reinstated on April 1st. So we're just going to walk through the proposal. Okay, so that's the first proposal. The second starts on line 14 there. And what that is saying is the winter housing provisions would be extended. So the way the budget reads right now is that winter housing would end on March 31st. And what the proposal is that be extended to June 30th, 2025. Again, that not count for the maximum days. Now, I don't see any elimination of the 80 days, but I guess it becomes irrelevant since it says it's not counted towards it. Okay, I was thinking out loud as I was saying that. Okay. That would essentially, since there's no room cap, I'm just sort of talking out loud. What our experience has shown us is it's I would say around 15 to 1,600 rooms that are necessary in the non-cap time, at least based upon what was in place prior to the cap going into place. But what do you see, Jubilee, on like the most recent report?
The most we've had since July 15th, 2024, which is what
No, we need to look at the
Yeah.
winter months.
I've got a,
Do they have anything like for December? I think they had a December report.
on December 16th, 2024, there was 1,325.
Okay, it's probably gone up since then, would be my guess, but, so what
There's
does,
also a natural capacity.
that's what I mean.
They
is
can't
that-
get enough.
I think the new.
That's kind of where we're at.
1,500 at one time.
Yeah, we had like 1,564 or something like that at one point in time. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as understanding what the proposal
And
does.
the June 30th day, Brenda, is because that's the end of this budget, that the BAA's July 1st, our next budget goes into effect. So anything we do in the BAA is kind of up through June 30th. And so that's what that date means.
So it isn't by weather. Because this was supposed to set up for the weather.
Right, that what the proposal is, rather than having 400 or so households, for at least 457, because they have already met their 80 days, they would be automatically removed from that benefit of having shelter.
Those are the ones there as of the last report. I can say,
Section 8 vouchers. A lot of them get,
No, I mean, these are people who have not been able to use a Section 8 voucher because they've not had
their
availability of housing. And the other thing we need to remember is that there is a curtailing of the Section 8 vouchers happening right now. So people have not used them, and they don't have a prospect. They are being recalled. They're being
I
taken
didn't know
back.
that. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things at play.
The money there.
Well, this is the question. That's the question that Jubilee and Esme have asked.
I did, in addition, asking, where we stand with the budget, what's been spent so far, what's left, what would the cost be to operate at 1,100 rooms through June 30th and then operate at 1,500.
At capacity, essentially,
Yeah.
yeah.
So once we have that information, I can share it, but do not right now.
So, and we don't know right now, are we underspending? Have we underspent? Are we right on target? If there's room to spend? So this is a case where it's not taking away from something like we were talking about earlier, because the administration has not put it in as a potential transfer to someplace else.
Right, they have not said.
So we need more information here. And so this is something actually where we need to have the data in order to actually make the recommendation, because we don't know if they're underspending or not. So we don't know if it's,
Some information
Or
for you.
if the Section 8 monies could be just moved over.
no, that cannot happen.
It's restricted.
That can't be restricted.
No.
Okay.
No, Section 8 is specifically
thinking.
for, yeah, I mean, it was a nice try. Good thought. Okay, so let's just leave this one for right now, okay? And I just want, so people think about it. While we're right here, you can see the language on the $100 that was in the previous, okay? And then we're going to be getting to the SNAP language in a minute, so.
And we did just get the data, so.
Did.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break in a couple of minutes, so to give you a chance to digest
Filter it.
the information.
Right.
And,
Oh, you got a hand up.
yeah, go ahead, Todd.
How long are we gonna table this for?
Well, we have to reach a discussion and a decision consensus this afternoon, so, just for a few minutes.
We just got data in, so we'll be able to discuss it with more information
Right, good.
momentarily.
Good, thank you.
Okay. So, let's just, keep going through your recommendations, Jubilee, and then, and Esme, and we will take a break right after this, because we only have till 3:40.
Oh, we don't have the floor.
Oh, we're on the floor at 3.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do you want me to
To
just
do.
say what it would cost?
I forgot about the three. I had 345.
Oh,
That's 345 in my head. Okay, so, all right, just a second, folks. Hold on for a minute.
I forget.
I'm not gonna need a lot of time.
Oh, on your budget.
Okay, all right, so we have time tomorrow morning at 10 if we don't get
It's
to you
fine.
today, but, because I think there's gonna be some questions, Dan,
Absolutely.
when there's, it's the,
It's like your confidence.
it's the,
Someone will have.
So funny.
it's the big, it's the biggest BAA item in the entire budget.
It's the biggest line
okay.
item in the whole.
That's this.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what would it cost to maintain the 1,100 rooms without the 80-day cap? And this is kind of while maintaining, for those
Mhm.
people, what's already been budgeted. That would be an additional $50,000. Just for the 11 to do that. What would it cost for the 1,500 rooms? That would be an additional $2,368,000 over what was budgeted, but it should be noted the current capacity is around 1,400 rooms. And they have been unable to increase that capacity while maintaining health and safety
That
standards.
comes so much more from 50,000 to.
So what they're saying is they are comparing it to what has been appropriated. So what they're telling you is that right now they are underspending because it would only take $50,000 to keep 1,100 rooms
Yeah.
throughout without the 80-day cap.
Okay.
Okay. However, if we were recommending that would go to a higher amount, of rooms, let's just say 14 or 1,500, it would cost more above the budget. But so it tells us that they essentially could do 1,100 within their existing budget.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
That's what it's telling
That's
us.
not bad.
Why,
That's what I interpret from that. And I know you all people are listening, so if that's not the right interpretation.
If that would be the case, Madam Chair, why would they not put a line in the BAA about unspent funds?
Because that's the way things work in government.
And part of it, it's a relatively small, I think, the projections are not necessarily that precise for between now and
yeah, I wonder, yeah, are there cutoffs
to
for
be able
the-
to, say.
It's
well, we're
actually a
not
good
gonna-
thing. It's
yeah.
a good thing that they didn't propose moving that money someplace
Yeah,
else.
right.
Okay, because it means.
It's too uneven,
They
yeah.
don't, it can fluctuate, greatly. I mean, it can.
Are you gonna recommend 1,100 for 50,000?
So, we don't know yet.
You don't know yet. Okay.
That's our-
I didn't know if you had recommendation.
Cogitate on that information, okay? So I just want to get through all of Jubilee and Esme's report, and so we're gonna move on to SNAP.
And maybe one last comment too, to put the numbers into perspective a little bit, like after one of our more recent rounds of evictions and we began opening these 2 state-operated temporary 5 months only shelters, the price tag for those shelters, which would only be operating for 5 months and have limited capacity, is $3 million. So to think about those numbers in comparison.
Or even 2 million.
Oh my God, even 2 million, just saving $1 million off the top of.
Crazy.
Yeah, and also it's for people that have a little bit of, I don't know, safer.
More autonomy over there
Yeah.
and privacy.
It's not necessarily safer. I think that's.
Oh,
what-
yeah.
I talked to families in one of the shelters and they're much happier there.
So that's an option at least.
It is, and I think that if you could also find out if they have spent all of the $10 million on shelter, because I think you make a good point, Esme, that if there is money that, I know, for instance, I'm sorry, Rutland, but I know that they've not been able to finalize Rutland yet. I know he's still working on it.
It's close.
You might want to do it before we vote on this. I'm just kidding. But we need to know if there's any unspent funds in the shelter category that could be used for the hotel if we,
I know they're listening, but if you want to
I
respond
know,
to the email and ask that.
yeah. So, okay. All right, let's move to SNAP, 3 squares, and then we might have time for you, Dan.
Right, this one, last but not least in our section is exploring the concept of discretionary, because they're not called funds, they are called, exemptions. So Vermont at the moment has a bank of 29,000 discretionary exemptions, which would allow folks who are already enrolled in SNAP or Three Squares Vermont to have a month window if they're expected to be disenrolled from the program to get their paperwork together, particularly for proving employment purposes. So rather than kind of having that on and off ramp where folks are in and out of the program and having to enroll and re-enroll this month, these months are available and they're not state funded, but rather federally funded, that folks can request to be used while they are doing administrative tasks to continue proving that they can stay on the program. And Vermont is kind of unique in that we are one of the few states who hasn't been using these discretionary funds for, I think, a decade.
So other states use this on a regular basis?
Yes. So that's a very large pot of money that I think we felt really uncomfortable wasting. And it's not coming from
State.
a state budget.
If people are not, it's in the language section. It actually
Yeah.
explains it better
Yeah.
right in the language
Yeah.
there.
And did you
The
get
very last
any,
item.
did you get any indication from DCF as to why we don't utilize that discretionary month?
I think
I'm reading it.
I might need to dive into.
Okay, all right, so- That was one of the responses that you were waiting for?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you don't need to kind of like answer on the fly.
Sure, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Oh, well, one important piece to consider is that, and an important reason to include it in the BAA is these funds are going to expire on October 1st. So it must be addressed as soon as possible. And I think we actually have a bit more than usual because of our relationship with the pandemic and COVID-19, and the federal government had a different, they made a different choice about how many to distribute to each state nationwide. So we do not want to lose that money. And I think that's really something, so we put language in to sort of direct the agency to administer these funds that we have available and that we will lose if we do not.
And where would they go?
They go to families.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah, so,
Families who might be losing Three Squares.
yeah, and we know that there's data out there suggesting that approximately 200 families per month are being kicked off of the Three Squares Vermont, or I guess kicked off is, kind of
And
become
they have to reapply.
ineligible because of certain work requirements, which can be pretty complex to report. So if they have this window, a single month to help do that processing of that work reporting requirement, then could be really helpful instead of having to enroll and disenroll and re-enroll to just keep that fluid without all the stress and.
how much is in that fund right now?
It's the units that we have a bank of 29,000
Okay.
that is available to Vermont to utilize, and it's
Use it.
federally funded, and it actually can aid in efficiency of state government by not having to process a new application
Yeah.
for somebody who's already eligible.
And
So-
labor,
And labor.
cost saving.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. You had a lot to digest in yours, and it's a lot for us to digest. So we'll think about that some more. We're gonna have more discussion time tomorrow. I'm gonna
Okay.
sort of start to put together the draft memo, and so you'll see it in that format, and we'll have more discussion and, our sort of consensus or not consensus when we get there, okay? Okay, Dan, we have 15 minutes. Is that gonna work for you?
Give it a try.
We'll see. And if not, I don't want to rush it. If we
Nope,
need to
it's fine.
continue it to tomorrow morning, we can continue it till tomorrow morning. So Dan and Todd are on.
All right.
You didn't send us anything.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, I can.
No, all right.
I'll
No,
I'll
that's
send
great.
it. I'll send it, but okay. It's
Just wanted to make sure I didn't
not
miss it.
really proofread very well.
Give me that song.
No. Okay, so we're recommending no changes in the BAA to the proposal. However, the BAA does show the fragility of many of Vermont's 33 skilled nursing facilities. There's a request for about $45.4 million in additional funds in the BAA for skilled nursing facilities. Okay, there's two line items that are where this is addressed. B334.1, choices for care, nursing home Medicaid bed pressures. So this is basically the overutilization or more people coming in to need skilled nursing facility. It increased, their projections are, so this is what we've already utilized, plus what we're going to need through the end of the fiscal year, state fiscal year, is 77,755 days of care. So it's $315 a day. If you think about it, that's, or if you look at it, that's $114,000 a year for skilled nursing homes, or $115,000 a year for skilled nursing home care. Looking at the number of days, it's about 213 people, although I'm sure that there's some coming in and some leaving. It's not 213 people coming in for 1 year. It's probably a mix. So this is an increased utilization of 24.4 million in pressure on the BAA. So you'll see that line item. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this because we heard that projections for skilled nursing care have begun to level off since COVID. Where it dropped off, there wasn't people coming in, and then it started to pick up. More people were going into nursing homes. I'll talk more about that. The second item is 21 million in emergency financial relief. Last year we allocated 17 million, and that was used to shore up 11 skilled nursing facilities. This year, there's been 4 that have been processed and 5 pending. There could be expected more to come. So that's an additional 21 million in the BAA. As I was saying, there's 33 nursing homes in Vermont or skilled nursing facilities. Number of individuals had dropped during COVID, but it's been stabilizing back to the pre-COVID levels. And where the need for this emergency financial relief is coming from is staffing levels are in statute. You have to have so many people working there, and inflation pressures. So it's important to note that in order to be eligible for emergency financial relief, you have to basically have spent everything down. There's a process where they go in and they look at the books and make sure. And so it's kind of problematic because you're basically saying, okay, you've made it to zero. You've used all of your finances and we're kind of bailing you out to keep you going because we don't have the capacity to just let you go out of business and move people to another facility. So the reimbursement for nursing homes is calculated based on costs from 4 years ago. So in the current BAA, this is kind of problematic because those numbers are from 2021, which is during COVID, when we had less cost because there was less people in skilled nursing facilities. So what we want to talk about moving forward as we get into FY26 and possibly even when we're looking at the H13 is maybe there's a way that the commissioner and the division of rate setting can update these rates when external pressures such as inflation, COVID, whatever comes along, so that we're not constantly utilizing emergency financial relief to kind of keep the doors open at nursing homes. It would be good to have it a little more stable. And so that's something that this committee should be talking about and offering possibly some language to allow the division of rate setting to go in and rebase or reset those rates. That's kind of it for the BAA, but I definitely we want to note that since 2020, we've lost 321 residential care facilities. So these are facilities that are in the beds. Sorry.
I was just
Correct. Bed right there. Just say that word.
That's why I was paying attention.
Yeah, good,
Gotcha.
good. I like it. I like it. I'll get it this way. Maybe I'll make it a little bigger. So I talked earlier about that nursing home beds are around $315 a day. These res care beds are considerably less, around 87.20 per day. So big difference. And here we are not having the same structures in place that we have to make sure that our nursing homes or skilled nursing facilities are able to stay open. Now, it's also a different level of care. However, if we don't have these residential care homes, some of which can offer higher levels of care to individuals there, up to almost nursing home level of care,
It's
but
pretty darn
it's
close in
pretty close.
the ERC, enhanced residential.
Enhanced
care.
residential care 3 or 1. I
Mhm.
think it's 3. So, we need to continue to make sure we invest in these in order to keep individuals and provide their care in that setting much longer. So our Representative Nielsen and I's recommendation is to approve what has been proposed. And there's other things in the BAA, but these are the two that really jump up in a majority of where the money is coming from. There's a bunch of collective bargaining agreements in there. There's some calculations that needed to be changed based on some Fed requirements. And there's the other one was Agency of Digital Services.
Yeah.
So-
We let appropriations deal with that. I'm
yeah,
not sure
so
what that
there's
is.
some of that in there. But generally, the two big items are the choices for care, Medicaid day, bed pressures, and emergency
Financial relief.
financial relief.
So this is, I guess, more of a statement than a question. So in the meeting that we had with the department,
Mhm.
the 77,000 extra bed
Mhm.
days.
Yeah.
But in total, the information that was provided by the department to Representative Yakuboni, when we look at FY 24 days and FY 25 estimated days, they're pretty almost the exact same. They're all in the $600,000 and change. And so there actually really hasn't been an increase of 77,000 days. It's just that the department did not budget
They
for
did
that.
not budget for that
Right.
addition
They presumed a continuing decrease
in their budgeting, but
in their
not,
budgeting,
but not what they,
but it wasn't
possibly not what they're.
reality. So
Correct.
that will be again something for us to look at in the
Yeah.
FY 26 budget.
Absolutely. Noted that in here.
Yeah, I think that we'll talk a little bit about choices for care in broader context because it's a big program. It includes nursing facility as well as all the home and community-based services for older Vermonters and people with physical disabilities. So in essence, what you're recommending is that while we agree with this, there is some systemic work to look at for trying to see what the department's plan is for sustaining and increasing long-term care residential supports
Yes,
at all levels.
right, across the continuum of care.
Yeah. Okay. All right, folks, we've covered a lot of material in this bit. I don't see any disagreement, but we're going to
I'm
come,
looking for questions.
we don't have time. We get questions.
So spectacular.
Yeah, right, Eric, that's right.
That's
So,
for you.
tomorrow, this may be dangerous because people will have an opportunity
Oh,
overnight to
absolutely.
think of questions.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
Glad to answer any questions.
That's why you didn't send it to us, right?
And you're gonna send it.
Great support that,
Yeah,
is
okay.
available.
We will.
You're gonna send us something.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
look at it.
Okay, so we will be continuing this discussion tomorrow. You'll see hopefully a draft from me. It probably won't be before the meeting tomorrow, but at the meeting tomorrow. Of trying to put together all of the information that we have covered here today, and then we'll do some straw polls and census work tomorrow so that we can get it in on time. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget, we have 3:45.
It's not.
We have 3:00, but then we have 3:45 as well, with the governor's administration presenting their education proposal. It just as a reminder, it's not a required attendance, it's a voluntary attendance. So, anybody have any questions about budget or what we're going to do tomorrow?